The for sale sign was a punch to the gut. No, worse it was a tombstone, marking the death of everything I had promised my Aunt Clara. I pulled my truck over, the gravel crunching under the tires like shattered memories, the engine ticking a quiet, mournful beat. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely turn the key. A flash of pink and gray, a new, overly manicured lawn, the scent of fresh-cut grass that didn't smell like Aunt Clara's at a lit all came together in a sickening blur of wrongness. My heart just dropped into my stomach. How could this happen? Had they really done it? This was a nightmare. A deep, heavy sigh escaped my lips, tasting of dust and disbelief. I had been gone for 2 months, a business trip that had felt like an eternity, and in that short time, the vultures had descended. I knew who they were. The Homeowners Association Karen of all Homeowners Association Karens. Mrs. Eleanor Peterson, a woman who wore entitlement like a tailored suit. She lived 3 houses down. Her perfectly sculpted hedges a silent judgment on Aunt Clara's wild, rambling rose bushes and untamed fields. She had always hated the farm, called it a blight on the community's aesthetic, a phrase so pretentious it made my teeth ache. I could practically hear her condescending tone echoing in my ears, the way she'd click her tongue and shake her head whenever she saw the rusty tractor or the old chicken coop. I could already feel the hot, prickling anger rising up my neck, a familiar burn. Aunt Clara had sworn me to a promise on her deathbed, her thin, papery hand clutching mine. "Promise me, sweetie," she'd whispered, her voice a raspy puff of air, "that you'll never let them turn this place into one of their little cookie-cutter houses. This farm, it's our story." I had promised, my voice thick with emotion, and for 2 years, I had held firm. I had planned to fix the old farmhouse, bring the fields back to life, and honor her legacy. But now, it seemed, Mrs. Peterson and her developer friends had a different story in mind. What was I supposed to do now? Call a lawyer? Scream at the top of my lungs? The sheer audacity of it all was breathtaking. I stomped into my neighbor's yard. Mr. Henderson, an old family friend who was watering his prize-winning hydrangeas. "Hank," I said, my voice tight, "what in the hell is going on?" He looked up, a sad, knowing expression on his face. "Oh, bless your heart, kid. We tried to stop it, but Mrs. Peterson, she said she had a legal document, said your aunt had signed it before she passed. Said it gave the Homeowners Association the right to sell the property if it wasn't maintained to community standards." It just seemed so unbelievable. The words hit me like a physical blow. Aunt Clara would never have done that. Not in a million years. This was her home, her life's work. What kind of person would lie about something like that? The rage I had been suppressing boiled over, a red-hot fury. This wasn't just about land. It was about my aunt's memory, her dignity, and my promise. Something a little off in his tone, a flicker of something in his eyes, caught my attention. I leaned in, my voice dropping. "A legal document? What kind?" He hesitated, then lowered his voice. "She kept saying it was all in order, all probate court ordered. Just kept repeating that phrase over and over. Sounded a little too confident, if you ask me." A chill went down my spine, but it wasn't from anger anymore. It was a cold, calculated clarity. A strange memory surfaced. The day after Aunt Clara's funeral, I'd sat with her lawyer, Mr. Finch, who had carefully explained every detail of her will. There was a section he had been adamant about, something about protecting the farm. He called it a failsafe. Could this be it? I spent the next 2 days in a blur of calls and research, tracking down Mr. Finch and finding the documents he had filed. The truth, when I finally read it, hit me like a lightning bolt. It was brilliant. It was poetic. Aunt Clara, knowing exactly what kind of people she lived next to, had foreseen this. The will specified that the farm was to be held in a special trust, irrevocable for 5 years after her death, with one crucial, almost comedic, caveat. Any sale of the property within that period had to be expressly approved by the executor main writing, and the proceeds had to go to a very specific and highly unconventional charity, the Foundation for the Preservation of Untamed Weeds and Uncooperative Wildlife. The will was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive genius. What a woman! I found Mrs. Peterson 3 days later, holding an impromptu celebration on the vacant lot where my farmhouse used to be. The developers were there, a pair of slick-haired men in expensive suits, their faces flushed with triumph. Mrs. Peterson was holding a glass of champagne, her face a mask of self-satisfied superiority. To a new beginning, she announced, raising her glass, to finally getting rid of that eyesore. She didn't see me at first, standing at the edge of the property line. But then a neighbor's little boy pointed, and her gaze finally landed on me. Her smile faltered, her perfectly painted lips thinning into a tight line. I walked toward them, my strides long and purposeful. The developer's eyes widened slightly. Mrs. Peterson put down her glass with a clink. "Oh, honey," she said, her voice dripping with forced sweetness. "I was going to call you." The closing went so smoothly. Such a weight off all our shoulders, isn't it? "I wouldn't know," I said, my voice calm, "since I never approved any sale." Her eyes went wide. But the court order. I had the document." "You had a document you made up, Mrs. Peterson," I corrected, a smirk playing on my lips. "What you didn't have was a legitimate probate court order. But I do." I held up the crisp, official-looking document. The developers exchanged nervous glances. Their faces, a moment ago so full of victory, went completely blank. They froze, like a bug caught in amber. I read the relevant section aloud, my voice clear and steady, the words hanging in the air like a death knell. "The sale is null and void, gentlemen. And what's more, your contract with Mrs. Peterson is for a property she had no legal right to sell. I'll be in touch with my lawyer about the damages." The smugness bled out of Mrs. Peterson's face, replaced by a horrified realization. Her shoulders slumped. One of the developers turned to her, his jaw set. "You lied to us?" he said, his voice low and dangerous. "The final image I have is of Mrs. Peterson, surrounded by her perfectly manicured neighbors, her champagne glass empty and her face ashen, while the developers fumed and pulled out their phones, making angry calls. I walked away, the setting sun casting long shadows behind me. The sign was still there, but now felt different. It wasn't a tombstone. It was a promise. I looked back at the wild, untamed land, a sense of deep, righteous satisfaction bubbling up in my chest. Some things you just can't buy. Some legacies you just have to fight for. And some people, well, they just get what they deserve.